the American perspective of it all. In the yellow corner of our temporary bunker, it's talkSPORT's US writer Brian T. Smith, or should I say Brian T. Smith. So Brian, we're skeptical, shall we say, Andy, about
I'm not sensing that at all. I'm not sensing any skepticism.
You're not? Okay.
I feel like you have totally bought into the Americanization of Club World Cup.
So give us your perspective of how it went.
First off, let's get this out of the way. If Cole Palmer is not starting for England in the World Cup that actually matters next year, that is a serious problem. Number two, Todd Boehly deserves a little credit. All right, we've spent years ripping Todd Boehly on and on and on. What the heck are Chelsea doing? It looks like he might know what he's doing. They're in the Champions League, and obviously the answer in international football now is to have the deepest roster in the history of the game, and then you can win the Club World Cup. Seriously though. I thought overall the Club World Cup being a precursor to the World Cup, to grow the game in America, to grow the game internationally, those last 3 or 4 matches, I think that's what we thought it would be all along. You had packed stadiums, you had good crowds, there was energy. I thought Chelsea showed up very, very well last night. Tip of the cap to them. Nobody was picking them to beat PSG, so that's all a positive. I'm going to give you my honest opinion. I thought that the halftime show was absolute rubbish. I mean, the halftime show was garbage. I've seen halftime shows in American high schools better than that. And the fact that Coldplay was involved in that, I don't know what Chris Martin's doing right now, but he needs to focus a little more on his day job, which is actually producing good music. Number two, the post game, we can debate whether the President of the United States of America should have been Chelsea's newest signing on the stage with them. Let's get into that. But I was just amazed that everything was so slow and plodding. And if you're gonna do all that and have these really elaborate American presentations, have it run like the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is bam, bam, bam efficient. Yeah. I just thought the whole thing overall, the presentation, it felt like you were watching something from Las Vegas in the 1980s. Yeah. It didn't feel elite. It didn't feel quality. It didn't feel top notch. And that's a shame because they had this incredible platform. And I just thought the whole thing was a bunch of meh.
Is this a precursor to what we are going to witness, Brian, do you think, next summer?
I think this is clearly where Gianni, Trump's apparent best friend in the sports world, wants to take it. I mean, you see the Saudi influence, you see the American influence. This is not the Premier League. This is not. Most importantly, this isn't championship. This isn't going out on a Wednesday or a Saturday afternoon and watching your club in your town. This has nothing to do with any of that. But it's a big world, right? I mean, it's not just England. And we've seen this in the Club World Cup and the kickoff times where you're kicking off games at 3 p.m. on a Monday in Atlanta and you have 20,000 people in the stadium. They're doing that because they don't care about that. They care about the money and the TV and the streaming and the sponsorships. And it was all to set up the World Cup next year. I think the World Cup will be much, because it's the World Cup.
And also all the broadcasters that are obviously going to be buying the rights to the World Cup for next year, they'll have their own TV. They'll have their studios.
Yeah, they'll cut away. They'll cut away from all that.
You're not watching that junk during the actual World Cup. No. You're going to go to the TV studio. I thought the whole thing, though, being in New York for the NBA draft for talkSPORT, we have all this covered at talkSPORT.com. Yeah. Being there in New York a couple weeks before the final, there wasn't a buzz there. Honestly, there wasn't a buzz. I thought that they finally showed up for the final, and that looked really good. But the halftime show, the celebration, it just looked like a chaotic mess, and they needed to be better. I'm sure they'll be better for the World Cup. But I wasn't impressed by the Club World Cup at all overall.
Look, I mean, they're not going to put on this sort of entertainment when Uzbekistan are playing Jordan, for example, are they? No. Who both qualified for the World Cup finals. That is for sure. And it doesn't fit. You know, it took 25 minutes near enough yesterday. You know, the half-time interval is 15 minutes. You can't have players sitting in their dressing room wondering just when they're going to be kicking off the second half. I think the other issue, Brian, and it's something that none of us can do anything about, but obviously in the early part of the tournament, the weather was a really serious problem.
So this is actually my main concern. We can have fun with a halftime show and the post-game celebration, right? But I was in New York during the Club World Cup. Okay, we've had 3 heat waves here in the last 6 weeks or so. New York was abysmally hot. I mean, to the point that sweat is dropping off of you. You have to have the cooling breaks. What's it going to be like next year in America when you're playing all over America and you have thunderstorms, you have to pause matches, on and on. That affects the field of play. That affects what's going on the pitch. I would, the reason Chelsea won the Club World Cup, two reasons. Number one, they play very well. Credit to Enzo Maresca, credit to Cole Palmer, on and on and on. But they had the depth to get through it. That's what no one's talking about right now. They actually had the roster depth. They have 4 goalies. They have 5 strikers. They had the depth to get through it, and the heat and all these pauses and these breaks. Most clubs don't have that when it comes to team football. When you have England, when you have the U.S., when you have Brazil, on and on and on. The weather is going to be a huge situation next year.
Let's just take a quick call on this, because Peter is a Middlesbrough fan. It's always steamily hot in Middlesbrough. Peter, what did you make of it all morning?
It's the first time I watched the final last night, but putting a mic in front of a player at half time, Andy, you want to get in the dressing room, listen to what your manager's got to say, and take it on board of what you've got to do.
You're right. In those sort of conditions that they're playing in, you normally want to get in a dressing room, you want to sit down, get some water on board, listen to what... And you're right. It's just a bit of overkill all round.
Yeah. The only thing is, Peter. The only thing is that Mark Cucurella wouldn't have minded it too much because they were winning 3-0 at the time.
That's true. That is true.
What I want to see where this goes, though. If I'm Thomas Tuchel, you have to look at all of this, right? And in the end, there'll be no excuses. In the end, no one's going to care about the heat or the cooling breaks or the halftime show. It's going to be, did you win or did you lose? Did you make the final or not? If you're England, if you're Thomas Tuchel, you have to figure out how to maneuver all of this, because this is what some form of this is what you will be dealing with in America next year, and everybody's on the same playing field.
Yeah. Peter, thank you very much indeed for the call, by the way. I have to tell you that one thing is guaranteed is that the Club World Cup is in the spotlight. Yeah. You know, because if there hadn't been any of this stuff, you know, we'd have talked about Chelsea's victory and we'd have talked about the fact that actually it wasn't such a great tournament because the best clubs in Europe, at least, weren't there in the main. You know, exception being PSG.
And Jeff, just quickly with regards to weather, I played in obviously the '94 World Cup in the States. And I remember one of our games, I think against Mexico, was 118 when we took to the field in the stadium. It is but you just got to get on with it, you know, and somehow try to handle it. Get your rest in when you can.
The storms are the problem, aren't they?
They are.
It's the storms that are the issue. But look,
correct.
In '94, I mean, forgive me, I might be completely wrong, but I don't think there were any weather hold-ups during the course of that.
I can't remember. No, certainly we didn't have any, and we were down in Orlando as well as New York. But no, you just look. You know, there's a lot about the stadium in America are brilliant.
Yep.
You know, they're state of the art, purpose built, and you can park there. Everyone can get there. It's great like that. Of course it is. But yeah, lessons to be learned maybe from the Club World Cup for sure.
talkSPORT Breakfast, waking you up Monday to Friday morning from 6 a.m. on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.